In the bustling city of Lagos, the streets never slept. Vendors shouted their wares, children played in narrow alleys, and the aroma of freshly cooked meals filled the air. Among the many families thriving in this vibrant city was that of the Unwosus, Emeka and Chioma, a couple known for their contrasting personalities and deep love for their children. Emeka was a man of action, practical and dismissive of what he called superstitions. Chioma, on the other hand, was a woman of faith, grounded in prayer and belief in divine intervention. It was a week before the Uduma Food Festival, which coincided with the Christmas holiday celebration, an annual celebration that called families back to their ancestral villages to honor their roots and connect with extended relatives. In the Unwosu's household, preparations were already underway. Chioma carefully folded clothes into suitcases, humming a hymn under her breath. The children, bubbling with excitement, darted around the house, chattering about the cousins they would see and the adventures they would have. They had contacted a car rental company because their car was at the mechanic workshop for repairs and won't be ready for use until after the holidays. Emeka, have you reconfirmed our booking at the car rentals? She asked her husband. Emeka, lounging on the couch with a newspaper, barely glanced up. Yes, I have. The car will be here that day as promised, Chioma. You worry too much. Chioma hesitated, then spoke softly. We should pray before the journey. The road can be unpredictable. Emeka waved his hand dismissively. Chioma, we've made this trip every year without incident. God knows we are traveling. He doesn't need us to remind him. Emeka continued without giving any seriousness to Chioma's worries. My parents and my best friend, Nze, can't wait to see us. They will be so happy. I have decided to set up a business for Nze in the city so that he can also become successful. It is high time I stopped spoon-feeding him. He needs help to stand on his feet as a man, Emeka said. Chioma sighed, her heart heavy. She had learned not long ago not to argue when Emeka made up his mind. Yet, a nagging feeling of unease settled over her as she packed. She knelt by the bed that evening, whispering a prayer of protection over her family. In another part of the country, Nze sat in his dimly lit living room, his face twisted with bitterness. Every year, Emeka comes to Akuna village with his shiny car and his perfect family. He muttered to his friend, Mama Obi, it is as if he wants to mock me and my struggles. Mama Obi nodded, her eyes narrowing. Perhaps this year, things will be different. Perhaps it is time to humble him. As the duo's laughter filled the room, the winds outside carried whispers of something ominous brewing. Back in Lagos, Chioma woke up with a start from her afternoon nap. She had just had a vision of an old woman warning her to pray so she would not be a prey. Chioma continued with her prayers, unaware of the dark forces conspiring against her family. The next evening, Emeka closed from work to his auntie Amara's house to inform her of his trip to the village for the food festival. The streets were quieter, the hustle of the city giving way to the gentle hum of the night as he got to his auntie Amara's house. His auntie welcomed him and introduced him to her prophet, an old man who was in her house on a visit. They all exchanged pleasantries. The old man remained silent, his gaze fixed ahead. Then he turned to Emeka, his eyes sharp and piercing despite his age. My son, he began, you plan to travel soon, don't you? Emeka frowned. Yes, for the Uduka Food Festival. Why do you ask? The man's expression grew serious. Do not go. If you must, pray and fast before your journey. Danger lies ahead on that road. Emeka chuckled nervously. Baba, thank you for your concern, but I've made this trip many times. Nothing would happen. The old man's gaze didn't waver. I have spoken. The rest is up to you. He stood up to leave. Auntie Amara saw him out, his figure disappearing into the shadows of the night. When Auntie Amara returned, she told Emeka to listen to the words of the prophet. He is an old wise man who would not deceive you. He says whatever he sees in the spirits. When he reached home, Chioma was waiting for him, her face lighting up as he walked through the door. You are late. Everything okay? Emeka shrugged. I met an old man at my auntie's. He said something strange, though. He warned me not to travel without praying. Chioma's eyes widened, remembering her vision earlier on. Emeka, maybe we should take it seriously. He shook his head, laughing. Chioma, you and your prayers. He was just an old man trying to sound wise. Don't worry about it. But that night, as Emeka lay in bed, the old prophet's word echoed in his mind, and far away in the quiet village of Akona, Nze prepared to set his plan in motion, his heart consumed by envy and malice. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the living room as Chioma prepared breakfast. The children's laughter echoed through the house, their excitement for the upcoming trip palpable. Chioma, however, was restless. The old woman's warnings replayed in her mind, amplifying her unease. She decided to speak to Emeka again. Emeka, can we talk? She asked as he entered the room, buttoning his shirt. What is it now, Chioma? He replied, sitting down to eat. I think we should take the old prophet's warning seriously. Maybe we should pray and fast before the journey, just as he has said. Chioma suggested, her voice steady but concerned. Emeka sighed, setting down his fork. Chioma, we've done this every year without any problems. I don't understand your concern, but you are overthinking it. But what if this year is different? Chioma pressed, her eyes searching for understanding. Fine, Emeka said, waving his hand dismissively. You can pray if it makes you feel better. Just don't involve me in this paranoia. Chioma nodded, though her heart was heavy. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, she asked everyone to join her in prayer. The children groaned in protest, and Emeka reluctantly agreed, more to humor her than out of belief. Lord, guide and protect us on this journey, Chioma prayed, her voice steady and heartfelt. Shield us from harm and deliver us from any evil planned against us. The children murmured a half-hearted amen, while Emeka remained silent. But in that moment, Chioma felt a flicker of hope, trusting that her prayers would not go unanswered. In the quiet village of Akuna, Nze's bitterness grew with each passing day. A small mud house stood at the edge of the village, its walls cracked and its roof patched with old palm fronds. He sat outside with Mama Obi, his closest confidant, plotting his next move. Emeka has even abandoned the house project he started for me, saying times are hard. I should be patient. How long will I wait? Nze filmed. While I struggle, he flaunts his success as if to mock me. "What will you do, Nze?" Mama Obi asked, her voice low and conspiratorial. Nze's eyes narrowed. "I will visit the sorceress. She will help me put an end to Emeka's arrogance." They rose, their faces set with determination. They ventured deep into the forest where the village's most feared sorceress resided. The path was dark, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. When they reached the sorceress' hut, Nze explained his plight. "He must not reach this village," Nze said, his voice trembling with rage. "His pride must be broken." The sorceress listened, her face unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "It will be done, but such power comes at a cost." Nze nodded and handed over a bundle of coins and a piece of Emeka's clothing he had stolen during his last visit. The sorceress chanted over a bubbling pot, her voice rising and falling like the wind through the trees. "The road will turn against him," the sorceress declared. "His journey will end in tragedy." As Nze and Mama Obi left the forest, a sense of satisfaction settled over Nze. The morning of the journey finally arrived, and the Nwosu's household was abuzz with activity. Emeka double-checked the car they rented from the car company, ensuring the tires were inflated. The oil was fresh and the tank was full. Chioma packed the last of the food items into a basket while the children ran around, giggling with excitement. Chioma took a moment to kneel in the living room. Her quiet prayer for protection seemed to calm her, though the unease lingered at the edge of her thoughts. "Emeka," she called softly, "are you sure we shouldn't pray together as a family before we leave?" Emeka frowned, but didn't respond immediately. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, if it will make you happy." The family gathered in the living room. Chioma led the prayer, her voice firm and deliberate as she called for safety and guidance on their journey. The children stood quietly, sensing the seriousness of the moment. Just as they were about to leave, the car refused to start. Emeka's frustration bubbled over as he popped the hood, tinkering with the engine. "This doesn't make sense. It was working perfectly a while ago." Chioma watched him silently, her heart torn between worry and relief. "Maybe we should delay this trip," she suggested. "It could be a sign." Emeka shook his head. "A sign of bad maintenance, maybe. I'll fix this." But despite his efforts, the car remained stubbornly lifeless. He called the car rental company, requesting for a backup, but all the other vehicles have been fully booked for the festive period. He called his mechanic again to inquire about the state of his own car. "The engine is not working well, sir, and it is not looking good at all. We will need a few days to get it sorted." Emeka's frustration was palpable, but Chioma's quiet relief was unmistakable. "We'll take public transport," he declared, unwilling to let the setback derail his plans. Chioma hesitated, but eventually agreed, though she couldn't shake the feeling that the delay had been a divine intervention. As they prepared to leave for the bus terminal, the old woman's warning echoed in her mind once again. "Pray, so you won't be a prey." The family arrived at the bus terminal, bustling with activity. Vendors sold roasted plantains, peanuts, and sachets of water, their voices competing with the roaring engines of departing buses. Emeka held the ticket tightly as they navigated the crowd. The children clung to Chioma, their excitement bubbling despite the noisy chaos around them. Chioma held onto their hands, her eyes scanning the terminals with a sense of unease. The warnings from the old prophet and the old woman in her vision still lingered in her thoughts. As they boarded the bus, Chioma's heart raced. The seats were cramped and the smell of fuel hung in the air. Passengers chatted loudly, their laughter mingling with the driver's occasional shouts to hurry up. Chioma squeezed into her seat beside her husband, whispering a silent prayer as the bus roared to life. The passengers were a mix of travelers, a group of traders discussing their wares, students returning home from school for the festive period, a mother soothing a crying infant, and a pair of elderly siblings arguing about whether they had packed enough provisions. The air burst with chatter. She couldn't shake a sense of unease. The driver revved the engine as the passengers settled into their seats. Vendors outside shouted last-minute offers of roasted plantains and sachets of water, their voices blending with the sound of departing vehicles. Inside the bus, Emeka held the children's bag securely while Chioma adjusted her seatbelts, her eyes darting nervously towards the windows, whispering a silent prayer. "Relax, Chioma," Emeka said, noticing her tense expression. He squeezed her hands reassuringly. "It is just a bus ride," he said. "We will be fine." "I hope so," Chioma replied, her voice barely audible over the noise. She glanced at the children, who were already engaged in excited chatter, oblivious to her worries. The bus began its journey, the city's chaos gradually fading into the distance. Fields of lush greenery stretched out on either side of the road, and the air grew cooler as they moved further from the urban heat. Chioma's mind remained restless, even as the children pointed out trees and animals along the way. As the bus sped along the highway, Chioma's gaze drifted to the sky. A lone crow circled above, its cawing sharp and piercing. She shivered, clutching a scarf tighter around her shoulders. Emeka, noticing her discomfort, rolled his eyes but said nothing. Moments later, the bus jolted as it hit a pothole, drawing gasps from the passengers. Chioma's heart raced as she glanced at the driver, whose furrowed brow hinted at his own unease. Further down the road, a small roadside shrine came into view, its weathered figure draped in red clothes. A few passengers crossed themselves or murmured prayers, adding to the growing tension. Hours into the journey, the bus hit a bumpy patch of road. Passengers jolted in their seats. Laughter and groans filled the air. Chioma's grip tightened on her seat as she whispered another prayer. Emeka noticed and chuckled. "You are praying for every bump now," it hissed. Chioma forced a smile but didn't respond. Deep inside, she felt an unsettling pull, as if something unseen loomed ahead. Far away in the village of Akuna, Nze sat by his window, his lips moving in silent incantation. The curse has been cast, and the journey had only begun. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the road in shadows. The bus headlights illuminated the winding path ahead, but the darkness seemed to close in around them. The once lively passengers grew quieter, their conversations reduced to whispers. Chioma watched as the driver navigated the narrow turn, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. The winding path felt endless, each curve adding to our growing dread. Outside, the sound of crickets was replaced by an eerie silence. The peace was shattered when a blinding pair of headlights appeared ahead. A truck barreled towards them, its horn blaring. The bus driver swerved sharply, sending passengers tumbling against one another. Screams filled the cabin as the bus narrowly avoided a collision. The truck disappeared into the night, its red tail lights fading like a phantom. Chioma clutched the children tightly, her breath coming in short gasps. "God help us," he murmured. The driver suddenly shouted, "The brakes aren't working!" His voice panicked as he struggled with the wheel. The bus sped uncontrollably. Chaos erupted as the bus careened down a steep slope. Passengers screamed, clutching their seats as the vehicle swerved dangerously close to the edge of the road. Chioma's prayers seemed to fill the cabin. Her voice rose above the chaos, steady and commanding. "Lord, save us, protect us, in the name of the Almighty, shield us from harm," she cried. The bus speed began to slow, as though an unseen hand had taken control. The driver, wide-eyed, stared at the wheel as the vehicle came to a gradual stop, just inches from the ravine. The passengers sat in stunned silence, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Chioma clutched her children, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered. The driver stepped out, his legs trembling as he inspected the damage. "I don't know how we stopped," he admitted. It's a miracle." Despite the growing tension, the children remained blissfully unaware. They giggled as they played a clapping game, their voices a stark contrast to the somber mood in the bus. "Mama, look at the trees. They are so big," the youngest exclaimed, pointing outside. Chioma forced a smile, nodding. "Yes, they are. But stay quiet now, all right?" Their innocence was a small comfort, a reminder of hope amidst the encroaching darkness. Relief turned to murmurs of disbelief as the passengers recounted what had happened. Some called it luck, while others whispered about divine intervention. Chioma's unwavering faith inspired a few to pray alongside her. "We were saved," one elderly woman said. "This family's prayers protected us." Emeka sat silently, his hands trembling. He thought back to the old prophet's warning and Chioma's persistent prayers. For the first time, he began to question his belief. "Maybe there is more to this," he muttered, his gaze fixed on Chioma. Later that night, as the passengers tried to rest, Chioma drifted into a restless sleep. In her dreams, the old woman appeared again, her eyes glowing with an unearthly light. "Chioma, the journey is not over," the woman said. "Your prayers will protect them, but you must not stop. Evil is closer than you think." Chioma awoke with a start, her heart pounding. She looked around the bus, her gaze falling on Emeka and the children, who were sleeping soundly. She whispered a prayer, her hands trembling. As the bus ventured deeper into the countryside, the passengers began to notice a strange fog rolling in. It crept along the road like a ghostly shroud, swallowing the trees and fields around them. The driver slowed down, squinting through the windshield. "The fog came out of nowhere," the driver muttered. his hands gripping the wheel tightly. The chattering among the passengers quieted, replaced by murmurs of unease. Chioma's heart pounded. She reached for Emeka's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Emeka frowned but didn't respond immediately. The fog seemed almost alive, twisting and turning as if it had a mind of its own. The children huddled closer to Chioma, sensing her unease. The bus came to a halt. The driver stepped out, disappearing into the thick mist. Minutes passed, and the passengers grew restless. "Where is he?" someone called out. Chioma's prayer grew louder, her whispers audible to those near her. Emeka sighed, trying to maintain his composure. "He's probably checking the road," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Suddenly, the driver reappeared, his face pale. "The road ahead is blocked," he announced. "A tree fell across it. We'll need to clear it before we can move." Passengers murmured anxiously as a few men, including Emeka, volunteered to help. Chioma watched him step into the fog, her heart heavy with fear. She clutched her children close, whispering a prayer for protection. In the distance, a shadow moved. Chioma's breath caught as she stared into the mist, her unease growing stronger. Whatever lay ahead, she knew they were not alone on this journey. As Emeka and a few other passengers walked to clear the fallen tree, the fog thickened, making it hard to see more than a few meters ahead. The eerie silence was broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant cry of a bird. "Hurry up, let's get this done," Emeka said, his voice steady but tinged with unease. The other men nodded, using sticks and their bare hands to drag the branches off the road. Meanwhile, inside the bus, Chioma's anxiety grew. She held her children close, her eyes darting to the windows where the fog seemed to press against the glass like an uninvited guest. "Mama, what's that?" her youngest child whispered, pointing to a shadowy figure moving in the mist. Chioma squinted, her heart racing. For a moment, she thought she saw the outline of a person, but when she blinked, it was gone. "It's nothing, my dear. Just stay close to me." Outside, one of the men suddenly shouted. "What was that?" he asked, stepping back from the tree. "What?" Emeka replied, looking around. "I thought I saw something move," the man said, his voice shaky. The others paused, glancing nervously into the fog. Emeka shook his head. "Let's focus. We are almost done." But as they continued walking, a low growl echoed through the mist. The men froze, their eyes wide. Emeka turned towards the sound, his fists clenched. "It's probably an animal," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Let's finish quickly." Back on the bus, Chioma's prayers grew louder. She could feel the darkness closing in, a sinister presence that made the air heavy. The children huddled closer, their fear mirroring hers. Suddenly, the growling stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. The men hurriedly cleared the last of the branches and returned to the bus, their faces pale and their movements quick, and the bus crept forward, disappearing into the fog. As the bus moved slowly through the thick fog, the passengers grew restless. Conversations turned into hushed whispers, and the air inside felt suffocating. Chioma's grip on Emeka's arm tightened as the bus hit another bump, jolting everyone in the seats. "Emeka, something is not right," Chioma whispered. "It's just the fog," he replied, though his voice lacked confidence. "We'll be fine." But Chioma's instincts screamed otherwise. She closed her eyes, her lips moving in prayer. Around her, other passengers began to notice strange occurrences. A baby cried inconsolably, and no amount of soothing could calm it. An elderly man muttered under his breath, clutching a rosary tightly. For a moment, it seemed they would escape whatever was haunting them. But as the bus picked up speed, the shadows outside grew more pronounced, closing in like predators stalking their prey. The passengers knew they were forever changed. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Their faith a shield against the unknown. The bus finally emerged from the fog into a clearing, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. Passengers sighed in relief, though the tension remained. Chioma glanced at Emeka, her eyes filled with worry. "We need to pray," she said firmly. Emeka hesitated, but nodded, his earlier skepticism replaced by unease. Chioma led the passengers in a quiet prayer. Her voice was steady, her faith a beacon of hope in the midst of fear. Emeka sat back in his seat, his face pale. "Chioma," he said softly, "I think you were right all along. The old prophet was right too." As night fell, the bus approached a narrow bridge spanning a deep ravine. The driver hesitated, muttering about its unstable appearance. The passengers grew tense, their earlier courage waning. Emeka reassured the driver. "We can make it," he said, though his voice betrayed his doubts. The bus crept onto the bridge, the wood creaking ominously beneath its weight. Halfway across, a loud crack echoed, and the vehicle tilted dangerously. Passengers screamed as the bus teetered on the edge. "Everyone out!" the driver shouted. Panic erupted as people scrambled for the door. Chioma held her children tightly, guiding them to safety with Emeka close behind. As the last passenger stepped off, the bridge gave way, sending the bus crashing into the ravine below, but not without some passengers, including Emeka, sustaining some injuries as they scampered to safety. A huge log of wood landed on Emeka's arm, sending him crashing into a nearby shallow ditch. By the time the other passengers brought him out, his arms and legs were fractured. The group stood in stunned silence, the reality of their narrow escape sinking in. Chioma knelt on the ground, tears streaming down her face as she thanked God for their survival. The others joined her, their voices rising in a chorus of gratitude. Akuna burst with excitement when the travelers finally reached the village, escorted by ambulances and the police. They were met with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Women balanced baskets of produce on their heads. Children chased each other barefoot, and the elders sat in the shade of the great Iroko tree, their faces lightening up at the sight of the arriving travelers. Emeka and Chioma stepped off the ambulance with their children. Emeka in crutches and heavy bandages on his arm and legs. They were greeted by hugs and cheers from extended family members. The air was filled with the scents of roasted yams and freshly harvested palm wine. The warmth of the welcome was almost enough to ease the lingering tension in Chioma's heart. Other passengers were greeted by their respective families, thanking God for their safe arrival. Emeka whispered into Chioma's ears. "You were right," he said quietly. "Your prayers saved us." They watched from a distance, his expression unreadable, his plans thwarted. He had expected their demise, but their survival left him shaken. The villagers listened in awe as Emeka, Chioma, and other passengers recounted their journey. The tale of faith and survival spread quickly, becoming a legend that would be told to generations. Emeka, humbled by the experience, embraced Chioma's faith. Together, they vowed to live a life of prayer and gratitude, knowing that unseen forces had guided them to safety. In the depths of the forest, Nze sat cross-legged before the sorceress' bubbling pot. "They arrived safely," Nze said, his voice trembling with frustration. "How is that possible?" The sorceress stirred the pot, her face impassive. "There is a shield around them," she said. "The woman's prayers are stronger than you think." "Then we must try again," Nze said, desperation lacing his tone. The sorceress shook her head. "The spirits will not act against those protected by faith. You risk their wrath if you persist." She turned to Nze. "Your envy has poisoned your heart. Repent before it consumes you." Nze confessed, shamed and repentant, sought forgiveness. The family extended their hands of forgiveness, choosing to let go of bitterness and embrace peace. Guided by Chioma, Emeka approached Nze. "I forgive you," he said, his voice steady. "But forgiveness does not erase the harm you have caused." Nze wept, his regret genuine for the first time. The elders decreed that Nze must make amends. Stripped of his influence, he was left to rebuild his reputation through humility and service to the community. Akuna, too, changed. Nze's actions served as a lesson, and the villagers became more united, their bonds strengthened by the trials they had witnessed. As the Uduka Food Festival began, Chioma led a prayer of gratitude. Her voice resonated through the village church. The villagers joined in, their spirits lifted by the family's resilience. The journey to Akuna had been one of trials and revelations, but it had also been one of transformation. The family's bond grew stronger, their faith unshakable, and as they celebrated the Uduka festival, they knew they had been truly blessed. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, share and comment on my YouTube channel. See you on another episode of my folktale story. Bye.